For every year this man was locked up, he would carve a line on his hand. He had been locked up for 8 years. Every day, he learns fighting techniques on TV, and then punched the wall to practice. He didn't even stop although his hands were bleeding. He wanted to practice to become a master, and to take revenge on the one who locked him up. But that day, there was anesthetic gas sprayed into the room that put him in a coma. There were some strangers entering into the room, and then they took his blood and his cup too. What are they going to do? A few days later, he saw a news broadcast on TV that his wife was murdered, but unexpectedly, the police concluded that he was the killer, because they found his cup at the crime scene, and there were even his fingerprints on the cup, and a stain of his blood. This man was extremely angry. He surreptitiously dug the wall. It was time for him to go out for revenge. However, suddenly there was anesthetic gas sprayed into the room. He hurriedly pulled the bed back to its original position to cover the hole he dug. Then he fainted again. After regaining consciousness, he found him on the terrace. The enemy released him. After being released, he just wanted to take revenge. However, he didn't know who his enemy really was. He wandered on the road. When arriving in front of a Japanese store, he stared at the fish in the tank. He hadn't eaten meat for a long time. At this moment, there was a man approaching him, and giving him a wallet and phone. This man said, "Don't ask me anything because I don't know anything." He opened the wallet and saw that there was a lot of cash inside. After that, he quickly entered the store and ordered food. There was a waitress named Mito here. She looked familiar but he didn't know where he was seen her. The phone suddenly rang. His enemy called him. "I really miss you. Come and find me." After that, the enemy immediately hung up the phone. When remembering his wife's death, he was extremely indignant, but suddenly he fainted. When waking up, he was in Mito's house. Mito took him to her house. It turned out that because he hadn't seen the sun for so long, he was deficient in vitamins A and E, which led to him fainting. And Mito also felt that he was very familiar. After hearing what he went through, she knew that before being locked up, he had an unborn daughter. That girl was probably as big as her. Mito found him pitiful, so she pretended to be a journalist to find out about his daughter. She finally found his daughter's address. But unexpectedly, he wasn't in a hurry to find his daughter. He chose to take revenge first. He finally thought of a way to find the killer. He was locked in a secret room for 10 years, and every day he was forced to eat the cake named Dragon, and he would never forget the taste of it. Therefore, after going out, he went to all the stores that sold dragon cake. He went to each store and tried to see if the cake taste was similar to the one he had eaten before. He went and tried a lot of bakeries. He finally found a store that sold the same cake as the one he had eaten. Then he followed the store's shipper to find out the location of the secret room. However, the building here had countless secret rooms. Customers would go to the owner of the building and told him to lock up the person they asked for. And he was one of those locked up. Knowing that, he took out the duct tape and then wrapped that man tightly. Moreover, he even took out a hammer and pulled out all the teeth of that man. He pulled out the teeth in turn. He asked this man, "Who is the person who hired you to lock me up?" This man said that he hadn't seen the face of the petitioner. He only heard it through recording. After that, he took the tape away. When he reached the floor below, he just released that boss to his subordinates. But these people surrounded him and tried to kill him. Thanks to more than 10 years of practice, he was able to defeat them very easily. Although this group had a lot of people, although he was injured on his back and his weapon was even snatched, but he could still fight them. He knocked them out one by one. Eventually, they were also beaten badly by him. When he just opened the elevator, there was another bunch of people inside. He just smiled coldly. After that, he continued to defeat this group of people. When he just stepped out onto the street, there was a gunshot ringing out, which he was injured and fell to the ground. Fortunately, there was a kind man helping him get in a taxi. Strangely, the man even knew his exact home address. The man also said, "See you later, Daeso." Daeso recognized the man as the killer, so he wanted to chase him. However, his entire body was impotent and unable to move. It turned out the killer was still watching him. After recovering his health, Daeso found a fat man who was his good colleague 15 years ago. He asked the fat man if he had a grudge against anyone. The fat man opened the computer and logged into Daeso's old account. Suddenly, there was an account named Woojin sending friend requests. When opening the message, he realized that the owner of this account knew all about him. So maybe that man was the killer. Then the fat man found the IP of Woojin. He rushed to find that man. He finally met the killer. However, the killer seemed to know Daeso was coming, so he looked very arrogant. Daeso was extremely angry and rushed to attack the killer. But the killer said to him, "If you kill me, you will never know the reason why you are locked up for 15 years. The killer even showed off his chest. He said he had a weak heart, and he was using the pacemaker to maintain his life. He also said, "If you hit me, I will immediately stop the pacemaker, and then I will die. And you will never know the truth." He even gave a hint to Daeso. "First you have to find out who I am if you want to know the reason." If you can't find the answer within 5 days, I'll kill myself, the killer said. Therefore, Daisa had to follow. Daisa had to start the investigation from his account named Wujin. According to the data, they went to Wujin's classmate association. However, Wujin's friends used to go to high school named Sangnok that was also Daisu's school. Daisa went to the school library. He picked up the graduation photo album and opened the graduation photos from 20 years ago. But there was a strange picture inside that a girl only had a body, no head. Daisa remembered this girl was Su-ah. He heard that year, alone she went to the riverbank, but she accidentally slipped and fell to death. A week later, she was just found out. She also had a younger brother named Wujin. After his sister's death, he also went abroad to study, and since then he also mysteriously disappeared. Daisa finally knew that the person who killed his wife was Wujin. But the strange thing was that his sister died for unknown reasons. Why was he looking for Daisa for revenge? Only Wujin could answer. Daisa quickly went to find Wujin to ask. It turned out that year, Su-ah was playing with her younger brother in the classroom. Daisa saw this, and then he said this to his friends. But unexpectedly, people wrongly speculated that Su-ah was pregnant with her younger brother. Because she couldn't stand the rumors, she chose to commit suicide. Her brother was extremely angry, and had to wait more than 10 years. In order to make a revenge plan, Wujin locked up Daisa for 15 years. After that he killed Daisu's wife and blamed him. Wujin also asked Daisu, "Do you remember Mito at the restaurant?" The reason why Mito and Daisa looked so familiar, that because he found a hypnotist to intentionally hypnotize them not to recognize each other. And Mito's true identity was in this purple box. Daisa came over and opened the box. There was an album of his family photos inside, and there were also a lot of photos of his daughter. To the last picture, the person on it was Mito. Meanwhile, Wujin also ordered his subordinates to bring a similar purple box and give it to Mito. Daisa hurriedly called Mito. He didn't want his daughter's life to be ruined. He couldn't tell Mito that she was his daughter. He told her not to open that box. After that, Daisa supplicated Wujin to spare his daughter. He knew he had been wrong, and hoped Wujin didn't harm Mito. At first, he loudly threatened Wujin, but then, he knelt down and supplicated Wujin earnestly. He even licked Wujin's shoes like a dog. This made Wujin laugh hysterically, as if expressing all the hatred in his heart for so long. Finally, Daisa took the scissors and cut his tongue to make amends with Wujin. Seeing that, Wujin called his subordinate, and told him not to let Mito open that box. Eventually, Wujin didn't kill Daijin. He wanted Daisa to live in the greatest torment. After that, he also left. Wujin got into the elevator and shot himself to death. Not long after that, Daisa looked very haggard and went to find a hypnotist. He wanted her to erase the memories of Mito from his mind. She also did as he asked. Not long after, he woke up and found himself lying in the snow. Mito finally found him and hugged him tightly. Daisa was crying and laughing at the same time, because he didn't know if this was pain or joy anymore.